Okay, so we are recording live, people. I am in the new setting, as you can see, because I'm in school now, but we're going to do the same thing we've been doing, which is looking through the poem, the context, the themes, and how it links to other poems that we could use to compare it to in an exam. All right, we're going to start off with the context as normal. However, this context may not be as interesting as the rest. We have a more modern poet, so he doesn't have that tragic background. He's very much still alive, and therefore it may sometimes feel more difficult to make contextual links, but that is okay, because let's see if people can get this in the chat. What else can you do other than just make contextual links for AO3 for that section? What else can you do to get points? Does anyone remember? Very good. Holly says author's intent, and Sarah says lenses. Brilliant. So we can look at both lenses and intent. May says he's alive, so it's boring. Kind of, maybe not as necessarily that bluntly, but his life isn't as extensive as some of the other poets we may have looked at so far. Right. So Owen Shears is a novelist, poet, and playwright. So he dipped in a lot of the artistic things. And he was born in 1974 in Fiji. But he lived all his life in Wales, which is where he grew up, which is where he attended school, went to university. He then studied in Oxford and eventually went to East Anglia University. East Anglia is known for being fantastic in the arts and being fantastic in getting publishers to come and be interested in your work. So that's probably how he made a lot of his connections. What is also slightly maybe interesting about him is that although he had this very artistic side to him, and he was into writing poetry and into being part of play productions and movie productions, he was also an avid rugby player. So he had those two sides to him, okay? He's a poet that we often look at when we're trying to understand how poetry or how a poet becomes so professional in our industry and how they make a living out of that. He branched out and worked a lot with films and different books. So that is interesting to see if you are someone who is maybe interested in that realm of a career. Right, so this poem specifically, Winter Swans, is from a poetry collection called Skirrid Hill, and that means, in translation, split or shattered, which is very interesting if you look at the rest of the poem and what is happening in there. And a lot of his poetry that is in that collection is often about splitting and divorce and relationships parting. So we know from the get-go that this is a big theme in his poem. All right, I'm going to read through the poem one time. And as always, when we do these sessions, I want you to highlight anything that stands out to you, highlight anything that seems weird to you, highlight any images that you think are key to understanding this poem. Right, everybody have their poems in front of them. Here we go. Winter Swans. The clouds have given their all, 2 days of rain, and then a break in which we walked. The waterlogged earth gulping for breath at our feet as we skirted the lake, silent and apart. Until the swans came and stopped us with a show of tipping in unison, as if rolling weights down their bodies to their heads. They halved themselves in the dark water. Icebergs of white feather paused before returning again, like boats riding in rough weather. They mate for life, you said, as they left. Porcelain over the stilling water. I didn't reply, but as we moved on through the afternoon light, slow stepping in the lake's shingle and sand, I noticed our hands that had somehow swum the distance between us and folded one over the other, like a pair of wings settling after flight. Okay, so that is our first reading of the poem. what I want you to think about is what are the key language things that are happening here, techniques, images that are happening here. And I want to hear from some of you before we go through, like always, stanza by stanza. So let's hear some of your ideas of what are the key images, what are the key kind of moments or themes being explored. Who's brave enough to start? Okay, hold on. Chloe, I'm coming to you. Okay, Chloe? Can you hear me, Chloe? Let's see.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. All right, Chloe, go on. Why did you say pathetic fallacy?
Because at the start it says the clouds have given their all, 2 days of rain and then a break.
Yeah.
And it's like winter, and winter is harsh and unforgiving, and it could resemble their relationship.
Good, brilliant. So what is the pathetic fallacy telling us about the relationship at the very beginning?
That it's not healthy. It's, yeah.
Very good. So that it's not a healthy relationship. Do you see any switch in that, Chloe?
Yeah, at the end, it's like the relationship seems a lot more healthy.
Very good. All right. Thank you, Chloe. I'm gonna come to Holly next. Okay, Holly, you ready? All right, Holly. You said.
I said personification because it says in line 4, the waterlogged earth, and then line 5, gulping for breath at our feet. And obviously it's earth, so it can't like gulp for breath.
Good. So what does that show us about their relationship?
Like it's suffocating.
Very good. It's suffocating. They both feel like they're suffocating. Good. I see May. Hold on. Well done, Holly. I'm going to find you, May. Go on, May.
I don't know what to say, like what I wrote.
Yeah, say that again.
So they use tercets, or like 3 lines in each stanza, which symbolizes them as a couple maybe separated by a barrier in the middle. And it's also interesting that it stops doing that at the end and it's like a 2-line thingy.
Why do you think it has that couplet at the end then?
Because they've ended their sort of argument, dispute.
Good. So they've ended their dispute. Good. So they've come together. Right. Brilliant. So you guys have pointed out a lot of the important things at the very beginning. I can see Amber looking at the thesaurus at the beginning as well, looking at the lexical field of weather. Good, Sierra. We're going to come back to a lot of this, but I want to think in general. Obviously, the main imagery is natural, so it links to nature, which Owen Shears is actually known for. Most of his poetry links to nature and talks about kind of the natural cycle of a life or of a relationship. Okay, so a lot of the images that we'll see linked to that. You guys have already pointed out 2 of the most important techniques that he uses, which are personification and pathetic fallacy. We'll see that throughout. And you have also already pointed out, we'll see that again, the shift from positive to negative imagery. So how the relationship seems quite negative and heavy at the beginning, and how we get to that positive imagery at the end. May says, where's the caesura at the start? Amber says, the rain could be a metaphor for tears. Yeah, let's get to that in a second. On May, I think that Amber was referring to the dash after all, but we'll see that in a second because that is not technically, as May has pointed out, a caesura. But we'll look at the different caesuras and enjambments throughout. Okay, so structurally, before we go stanza by stanza, May has already pointed out that this poem is set up through tercets. Okay, so every single stanza has 3 lines in it, except for the end, which has a couplet. Does anyone want to give an interpretation of that? Chloe, good. Tercets are uneven. Okay, I'm going to come to you, Christabel. I'm finding you, Christabel. All right, Christabel, go. Wait, you're still muted. Go now.
Okay, so the tercets, they represent the uneven relationship of the couple. And at the end, since it ended in a couplet, that it shows like the togetherness, like they said, they ended their dispute.
Good. So they've ended their dispute and they've come together as a couple. We know, well done, Christabel. We know that often Romantic or love-related poetry is written in couplets, okay, whether that is through rhyme or whether that is through the actual structure of each stanza. Okay, but we do see some imbalance. Good, I see May said that the end is balanced, but we do see some other imbalances throughout the entire poem, not just in the amount of lines per stanza, but also see if anyone knows where the rest of the imbalance is shown. We'll get to that in a second, Holly, well done. Line length, well done. Sentence length, Sarah says, good. Remember to refer to it as line instead of sentence because we are talking about poetry. So we have uneven line lengths throughout. We also have enjambment, which makes the whole poem almost fluid, like the water that they're observing, like the swans that are swimming through it. It is a fluid motion. Why do you think that Owen Shears would use such natural imagery and links to kind of fluidity if talking about a relationship going through a troubled period? Why would he do that? We often see nature when it comes to love and romance, but why would he use it in a time where that love and romance isn't very clear? May, I want you to explain that. Hold on. May, go.
Because he's saying that that's normal and that's what does happen in relationships. And although the narrator can seem kind of cynical, it's like really quite an honest account of what happens in relationships and stuff.
Very good. I like the word an honest account. Brilliant. So everyone make sure you get that down, that this is a very honest account of what is happening. Amber, I am going to unmute you so you can explain what you just said. Hold on, let me find you. All right. Amber, go.
Hello?
Yeah.
Right, got it. Relationships of any kind should be like, they should be fluid and everything should feel like it comes naturally. But when you look at nature, even nature, nothing is always perfect.
Good.
Like you'll always have some kind of mutant looking flower. Flowers are supposed to be beautiful, even they can look a little funky sometimes, but they're still there and they can still work. So in a way, it's kind of saying, yes, even though it may look a little odd right now, you give it some love and care, you give it a bit of TLC, and it can look beautiful.
Perfect. So there's inconsistencies in nature, but it can continue to grow and continue to prosper when you nurture it. Lucia, I'm going to unmute you so you can give that point to everyone so they can hear you say it. Right, Lucia, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
You could also be saying that, like Amber May said, that you have to let relationships flow naturally and not force them. And also at the beginning, he wrote that the clouds are given a rule, and that's sort of what created this tension. However, when they just sort of let it naturally be and just sort of observed the nature around them, it went from the 3 lines to 2 lines to sort of represent that once you let it flow naturally, it sort of becomes one instead of just forcing it.
Perfect. So I'm going to mute you. Thank you, Lucia. So that is, if nature plays its course and you allow it to flow the way that it should, then you will ultimately come together if you're supposed to be together. And that is part of nature. That is part of a natural relationships, the ups and downs and creating distance between each other and then coming back together. Brilliant. Okay. Like we always do, let's go stanza by stanza, and I want to see some of you write your ideas. I'm loving that a lot of you from my classes are participating, but let's make sure even if you don't have me as a teacher, that you are writing down your ideas. I want to hear them. Okay, so Winter Swans, the title. Why that title? What are those 2 words representing? What are the connotations there without even looking at anything from the rest of the poem? Any ideas? Good. I'm gonna find you, Alicia. All right. Alicia, can you hear us?
Yeah.
All right, so explain what you just said.
So winter's quite harsh because like of the weather, and it's quite icy as well. So it could just have sort of like like it just like starts off with quite cold and harsh because like from like the relationship to make it quite negative.
Good. Perfect. All right. Thank you very much. And I can see a lot of you talking about swans not really being something we imagine in winter, but very true. And swans also have that very romantic and beautiful kind of image that we associate with them. So it's important to look at that almost as if there is a slight juxtaposition between the two words winter and swans. So we can think about the conflicting emotions that might take place within a relationship. Really good, Cristobal. I see you saying winter is cold and harsh, but the swans juxtaposed, it has connotations of harmony. Good. The couple is persisting throughout the hardships. Very good, Lucia. Chloe, winter is harsh and unforgiving. The swans mate forever. So even though they're having a harsh time, it won't last forever. Good. So they'll get past that hard time because as we know, swans mate for life. Okay. Let's look at the first 3 lines. The clouds had given their all, 2 days of rain and then a break in which we walked. Okay, and Amber, we'll get to that in a second. I see Amber saying swans weren't always a good thing. That's very true. They did have some evil connotations there afterwards. We'll look at that at the end for a possible second interpretation. Okay, so the clouds had given their all. Of course, this is the first use of personification here. The clouds can obviously not give their all, but in this case, they are given that human trait. And on top of that, it almost sounds like the clouds are attacking the couple, right? The couple are victims of nature because they're giving their all in the sense that they're giving the rain and the thunder and the bad weather and the winter and the cold, okay? But even nature in that case had to take a break, and that is when the couple goes out for a walk. Now, interestingly, structurally, you see the word break right before an actual break used with the enjambment there. So the break happens with the actual structure. The word and structure mirror each other there. But we also see kind of a break in the romantic relationship that they might have been expected to have. May says the use of the collective pronoun we symbolizes the unity and closeness between them, unlike the unrequited love feelings in the other English poems. Yeah, really good. So there is an idea that there is unity throughout the poem and throughout their time together, even if they are experiencing a difficult patch in their relationship. Okay? Symbolizes 2 days of an argument. Yeah, it definitely could. So they've gone through 2 horrible days of arguing and 2 horrible days of whatever it might be that they're finding difficult in their relationship, and then they take a break from that with this walk. Okay. The waterlogged earth gulping for breath at our feet as we skirted the lake, silent and apart. Who wants to take a shot at analyzing those 3 lines? I will unmute you. Let's see. Who says me? Christabel. Let me find you. All right, Christabel, go on.
So of course, it's a personification,
Yep.
and it suggests that the relationship is very difficult.
Good.
And it creates an image of like the hardship and how it like suffocating in a sort of way.
Very good. So the relationship is almost suffocating at the moment. And I'm going to add in what Amber just said, because the waterlogged could be the held up of the emotions or the buildup of the emotions. Well done, Amber, there. Thank you, Christabel. All right. So then we also have that image of the gulping for breath, which you guys talked about being overwhelmed or suffocating, or that the relationship is going under, feels a lot of the pressure. Then we have, as we skirted the lake, silent and apart. Who can tell me something about that silent and apart place? Madison, I am going to unmute you. Let's see if I can find you. Okay. Madison, so take us through what you just said.
They're skirting the lake, like they're skirting their problems, so they're just avoiding them.
Good. And what do you think about that silent and apart being placed at the end of that line?
It kind of shows the distance between them.
Very good. How does it show that distance?
Um,
What are the words? Why do we not expect that of a relationship?
well, they're not talking about their problems, they're not discussing it, they're just avoiding it, and they're silent.
Very good. All right, well done, Madison. So they're very silent. There is, as I can see Ramessa say, a rift in their relationship. Really good. And even though that caesura there, that slight pause created by those commas between lake and silent, shows that kind of pause and separation in their relationship. Jasmine says, gulp for breath at our feet could suggest that they could problems of their own. Good, that they're gulping and struggling to breathe in their relationships. Well done. Okay, so then we move on to until the swans came and stopped us with a show of tipping in unison, as if rolling weights down their bodies to their heads. What do we think about this stanza? What has Owen Shears done from the second stanza to the third stanza? What's the shift? Good. Christabel, expand on that. Emily says the swans could show the swans stopping their problem. Yeah, good. So that image, that introduction of the swans coming and the beginning of the stanza starting with the word until shows that their problem is going to be solved, or there's some kind of solution coming about in the poem. And the swans are introduced maybe to show that they're the ones who are going to solve that problem. Lucia, I'm going to unmute you so you can explain that. Go on, Lucia.
Oh, I was just thinking whether it could be a vulture, because it's a very sudden change in mood as they go from pondering about the relationship to the swans.
Very good. And how does that swan right away have a positive connotation?
It could be because it didn't stop the silence, but it sort of stopped the atmosphere, and
Good.
that the swans, you know, sort of symbol of purity and love and romance.
Good. And they've also shifted their focus. So they're no longer looking internally into the kind of darkness inside their relationship, but at the external beauty around them. Okay, very good. I'm going to unmute you, May, so you can tell us that. Go on, May.
So in the beginning, when the clouds are described as they, when he says there, and we already know that that's symbolism of their relationship, having like hardships, it's almost as though the narrator is saying that that hardship doesn't actually represent them because it's separating or segregating themselves from it, I guess.
Very good. So they're not even a part of that issue. It's almost like they can live and survive without that kind of horrendous atmosphere that the relationship is creating, right? Okay, perfect. So, okay, good. So we have this quick shift in tone, quick shift in mood, and quick shift in focus. We're no longer focused on the pathetic fallacy around them, but more so on the swans and their actions. What about the word unison that we have there? Anything interesting about the word unison there in comparison to how the relationship is presented in the first two stanzas? Yeah. So Jasmine says unison is doing things together. Really good. Alicia says unison shows togetherness. So the relationship could be getting better. Good. Really good. So we're seeing a shift in their relationship, not just in the imagery. The full stop could show how this is definite. Apart, unison, juxtaposition, I see from May. Very good. So if we look at what Lucia just said about the full stop after the word unison, it shows us that this is a finalized declarative statement. They work in unison and they are not separated. And this kind of gives us hope. It's quite an optimistic image there of the couple coming back together as well. But May does highlight that there's the apart of the relationship at the beginning and the unison of the swans, which is a very juxtaposing image that the poet has created. Well done. So they halved themselves in the dark water. I have Chloe saying halved shows they can't be selfish. Very good. So there's two parts to this whole. There's a contrast between light and dark. This darkness reflects the bad feelings of the relationship until the light of the afternoon suggests hope for the relationship. Very good. So we have the darkness in the water, in that line, in the dark water. And later on in the poem, you will see that it says through the afternoon light. So they're switching from dark imagery to light imagery, which shows that change in the relationship. Good. Ramessa says it suggests separation. Very true. If we look at that first line and we think about halved, can anyone, this is kind of a challenge question, but can anyone think about another poem where we've seen that image being used about half and not being whole? Very good, Christabel, when we two parted. So we see him talk about being half, what? What does Lord Byron say in When We Two Parted? He's half brokenhearted. Well done, guys. So he's half brokenhearted. In that case, he cannot be fully brokenhearted because he is not complete without that part of his relationship, or he doesn't feel like it was a real relationship. We can see some similarities here that the swan is not complete without its other swan. Amber says, could you also say the farmer's bride because they are apart? Yeah, you can. In a lot of these poems, you can talk about the relationship being halved and creating distance between the two, or coming together as a whole if that distance is broken. Good. So icebergs of white feathers pause before returning again like boats riding in rough weather. Icebergs of white feathers. Who wants to attempt to analyze that imagery there? We have two images kind of talking about the same. Annabelle, I am going to unmute you. All right, Annabelle, say what you've just said.
Okay, so I said that icebergs or white feathers show that there's more to the relationship than just the than just what we see. Just like an iceberg, and the color white shows purity and positivity.
Very good, well said, Annabelle. So we see, like an iceberg, there's a lot more underneath that. So there's a lot more underneath the surface that we don't know what's going on. We look at a relationship and we only see the exterior, but there might be something going on much deeper. And both link to the color white, which links to purity, positivity, innocence. Very good. Amber, I'm going to unmute you to see if you have anything to add. Go on, Amber.
So like technically this is considered the scene's considered like chilly with dark water showing all the negative emotions, and the icebergs could also symbolize danger hidden underneath and cold and worry. But obviously white feather has a lot of different complex associations like purity, protection, death of a loved one, and I think, wasn't it also cowardice during the First World War?
Good, yes.
So that could basically be implying that a couple of cowards not facing their true emotions and their problems and feelings in their relationship. But it just depends on how you interpret it as a reader.
Good. And I'm actually going to let May add on to that, because May, you just said something about being cynical, and that kind of links to what Amber was just saying. Go on and explain that.
So obviously there's like the nicer connotations of it being purity and all that, but they're also very sharp and cold, obviously icebergs, I mean. So the narrator could seem like a very cynical narrator because he's seeing something that's meant to be beautiful, like a relationship, as something that's sharp and dangerous and cold.
Good. So what the two of them have just done, what Amber and May have just done, is pointed out multiple interpretations, right? This is how we're aiming to get those high marks in a poetry analysis. Yes, we can see the icebergs and the white feathers as being white imagery and linking to purity and innocence. But you could always argue that there are hidden intentions behind these images, as Amber actually suggested at the very beginning of this session when she talked about maybe the evil connotations that swans might have, as well as the kind of sharp and dangerous side of icebergs, but I think all of that links into the idea that Owen Shears is presenting relationships as having imperfections. So they're not all secure and safe and happy and innocent all of the time. I saw Ramessa also talking about the fact that there's a clear juxtaposition between icebergs and white feathers, one being much bigger and heavy and the other one being a lot lighter. And that juxtaposition can show juxtapositions within relationships, good times, bad times, easy times, heavy times. Okay, so that's another way to look at it. Pause before returning again like boats riding in rough weather. Now this is again a very optimistic and hopeful simile we have there. So if we look at boats riding in rough weather, does anyone know what riding in rough weather means? How am I going to unmute? What does it mean, and how could that be a hopeful simile for the reader? Okay, let me find you, Holly. I already have you up here. No. All right, let's find Holly. All right, ready, Holly? Go on.
So it's like they're going through these tough times. Obviously, if it's a boat in water, they know it's going to be more dangerous to go when it's horrible weather.
Good.
They know it's going to be hard to overcome their issues, but they're still doing it.
Good. Very good. So it's talking about, I'm going to mute you, Holly. Good. It's talking about traveling over their problems. I can see Emily add on, which is essentially what Holly just said. Again, they're able to overcome the dangers of this water if they're looking at that as a simile to represent their relationship. Riding is what May just said, the opposite of capsizing. So the boat just shifts and adjusts itself to those waves. So like their relationship, they're going to go through troubled water, but they're going to adjust themselves to make sure their relationship stays alive. May says stabilizing. Very good. Thank you very much. Ramessa says, simile shows it's been a rough time for the relationship, but things are becoming more stable. Very good. All right, so that's our boat image. It's a very positive image, and from then on out in the poem, we see a lot more positivity and hope in their relationship. We actually even see some dialogue here. They mate for life, you said, as they left. What do we think about that? What do we think about the other in this relationship being given a voice, and why specifically that? Ella, gonna unmute you. Go on, Ella. Let's see if I can hear you. Go.
She's decided after seeing the swans that she wants to save the relationship, and she breaks the silence that he talked about before by saying this.
Very good. So it's almost, as Ella's saying, it's almost like an olive branch, and I can see Holly say it's this whole idea of like till death do us part. She is trying to fix it. She is breaking that silence. Ramessa says this voice seems to confirm that they have turned a corner in their relationship. Good. And that they're going to be giving this another chance, making sure that they can change from that negative imagery that they had at the beginning to the more positive. Porcelain over the stilling water. Why do we have that porcelain image there? I can see May says this fact that he speaks directly to her is powerful and effective. Very good. Holly, explain. Go.
So like porcelain is a very type of like fine china, and it's very delicate. Good. And then the water has to be still, otherwise the porcelain will like smash.
Good. And how
porcelain is like a metaphor for their relationship. Like they need to be careful, make sure they don't do anything wrong, or they could like break it.
Very good. Well done. So if you think about porcelain and linking it to nature as well, nature can sometimes be delicate. Relationships can be delicate. Porcelain is delicate, but if you take care of it, it is something very beautiful, right? We often think of all these porcelain designs as very beautiful and intricate, just like a relationship is. over the stilling water. We also have that caesura in there before the I didn't reply. Can see the break in between the two characters that are being explored here. But even though the break is there, they seem to be connecting much more than they were at the beginning of the relationship. But as we moved on through the afternoon light, and here's that light image that Christabel was talking about, how we now are looking at more of a positive light being shed on the relationship. Slow stepping in the lakes, shingle and sand. What do we have there? Christabel says the alliteration and sibilance. Good. Use sibilance because it's more specific. Shows ease when walking together. Very good. So we have the slow, we have the stepping, right? We have the shingle, we have the sand. All of that is the sibilance. They are moving together and in unison like the Swans did. Good. A very fluid and lyrical movement of the poem at that point means that they have come back together. Okay, and we know that they've come back together right afterwards when it says, I noticed our hands that had somehow swum the distance between us. Who's going to tackle that big image of swum the distance between us? Let's see. Okay, let me find you, Amber. All right, go on.
So basically, the swimming the distance between us, basically implying that there was a distance, but in a way, the swans represent them, and they're kind of, now that they have essentially communicated, they're coming closer together, and it's not just, and not only is it just them coming together, it's also because, you know, sometimes water has like the little ripples that drag you certain directions, like they're being pushed together by the nature itself, which makes the relationship seem all more natural, and it does give evidence to, like, even nature has its imperfections, but it can still be fixed, and it's bringing them closer together.
Perfect. So it's linked essentially to that image of the swans who have come together, and we know the swans work in unison and that they stay together forever. So this idea of them swimming almost makes them or equalizes them with the swans as they come back together. I'm going to turn to May in a second to look at that structural thing that she's found out. But let's look at the very last part, which is that couplet ending that says, and folded one over the other, like a pair of wings settling after flight. Super said, please don't unmute me, but okay, I won't unmute you. But about the last two lines, it could show that they're not together, and that the third line, which was shown in the other stanzas, could be perceived as the problem, which is now gone. Taisha, good, okay. So they're now together, and the third thing, which might have been the intermediate line between them before, that problem, whatever problem it was that they were facing, is now gone, and there is no longer that distance between them. Very good. Okay, anyone else want to add something to that last couplet? What about the word pair or folded? What do they have connotations of? How does that link to what we saw at the beginning of the poem? Mirroring birds, good. So the mirroring the birds, the actual swans. Alicia says, pair is no longer two separate things. They are one whole. Very good. All right, so make sure you're also just noting those little things like that it is a simile. So you can point that out when you are doing your petal paragraphs, right? When you're looking for that technique to include, you have the simile at the end there. Similar to the pathetic fallacy throughout, the personification throughout. Right, I'm gonna turn to May so she can explain a bit of the rhyming that we see throughout. Right, May, off you go.
Okay, so the partial and internal rhymes, like earth and breath, I think, for example, make it easy and lyrical. But the rhymes eventually become fuller near the end. Well, they're never like fully complete, but they become fuller. So sand and hands would be like showing the agreement between them and how they resolved things.
Very good. Thank you, May. I'm going to say that a little bit slower so that the rest of you can write that down. if you look at the first stanza, the words all and walked, so the end words of line 1 and 3, it's fine, May. We know how you speak. It's fine. So the all and the walked, okay, are half rhyme because of the AL sound that they share, okay, but they're of course not a full rhyme. It's very sometimes even difficult to hear that they rhyme at all. That is similar to the words earth and skirted in the stanza 2. Same thing with show and rolling in stanza 3. And in stanza 4, same thing with water and weather. They have similar sounds, similar vowel sounds, but they are not full rhymes. And as May pointed out, the only time we get close to having a full rhyme is in the second to last stanza, where we see sand and hands. Now, it's not a full rhyme because hands is plural. So that S sound at the end kind of breaks the fact that it could be a full rhyme. Why do you think, anyone have a guess as to why Owen Shears might not have included a complete full rhyme at that very end in that last couplet, where he could have made it very obvious that they're a perfect couple now with a full rhyme? Why didn't he do that? Good, Emily. To show how relationships aren't perfect, Sarah says no couple is perfect. Brilliant. So even though they fixed their problem, I'm going to say what May just said, even though they fixed their problem and they still haven't been able to claim their relationship as perfection, because no relationship can be. Annabelle says because their relationship isn't fully back to normal. That is true. They haven't even started talking to each other, which might be the next step. And May says because his poems are realistic and have the sense of falling apart as a personal work. Very good. And that at times you might fall out, it might take very long to come back together, or it could happen very quickly, but that doesn't then mean that your relationship is without any problems in the future. Okay, so that we can see that structural aspect that he doesn't finish it off with a perfect rhyme. Good. Jasmine said each couple has its flaws. Brilliant. Okay, so like always, the last thing that I want to do is I want you guys to type. Everybody, I want to see everyone interacting, and I'm going to read some of them out loud. I hope you're writing these down. What are the main themes in this poem? Let's go. Okay, good. Nature, love, togetherness, well done. Healing, pairs, unity, seasons. Good. I see a lot of separation, distance, growth, peace. Okay. So, oh, we're still going. Victory, well done. Distance, distance, distance. Change, well done, Daisy. So you can see that there are a lot of themes that come up in this. Actually, good. Understanding. I like that. Transformation. So there's a lot of the main themes that are throughout this anthology. So this is a great poem to use if you want to talk about any of that and kind of make a very clear comparison with another poem. Who is going to tell me, as our last thing for today, which poem they would compare this to and why? I'm going to unmute you, so just say me. Okay, Emily, I'm going to find you. Let me see if I can find you. Have I already unmuted you? No? Okay, let me find you then. All right, Emily, ready?
Yeah, well, because of course, neutral tones is also about a lake, except they have a difference of that with this poem they come back together, but while in neutral tones they're not together anymore, and like they're just like kind of like finishing their relationship there.
Brilliant. Okay. Guys, so make sure you write that down. Emily says you can compare it to neutral tones because they have similar imagery, but then the end result is very different. Okay, I'm going to go to Holly, and you're going to explain to us why you would choose Love's Philosophy. Go on, Holly.
Because obviously Love's Philosophy, it speaks a lot about there being 3 people. And then in Winter Swans, in the structure there's 3, and then at the end there's it mentions a pair. So there's a bit of conflict between the 2 poems, because Winter Swans seems to go along the lines that it's swans and they mate for life and there's only 2 of them. And in Love's Philosophy, he seems to think there's 2 women and 1 man.
Good. So in Love's Philosophy, one of the interpretations that you can for is that he thinks of kind of love as being much more fluid and not necessarily between 2 people. And in Winter Swans, we definitely see that there is a strict 2 people kind of mating for life. Good. May, go on, sing song.
Because it's quite optimistic and realistic, and it's not one of those really, really sad love poems like the other ones we read. And also there's a normal conflict. So, I mean, sing song, it's work. And then in this one, it's like a dispute.
Good, an unknown dispute. We don't even know as readers what that dispute is, but we understand as human beings that whatever it is, they're trying to get over it, or it might not have been such a big deal, or might have actually been a big deal, but they are working their way through it. Right, guys, so that is going to be all we have time for today. Hopefully that has helped. Let's see again, like always, all the smiley faces. Good. Well done. Okay, see lots of you. Well done. Remember that our next one is going to be on Friday. So make sure you are in on Friday at the same time, 1 o'clock, like always. See lots of you. Sierra, stay safe. All of you, stay happy. I'm going to upload this on class charts as well. If you know any of your friends who weren't able to attend, they can watch this. All right. Have a nice rest of the day, guys. I will speak to you on Friday.